The editor at Random House, Charles Harris, called me up and said, Van Sertima, something strange has happened on my table. You ended your piece by saying, if anyone could show me images of Africans in America before Columbus, I would take another hard look at this matter. And I turned the page, and I turned the page, and I turned the page. There were 7 images of Africans. John Williams, the novelist, author of The Man Who Cried I Am, had been to Mexico and met a strange German, last of the Royal House of Germany. Hitler put him in charge of the German embassy in D.C. And something happened, and he was dismissed. I was later to find out why he was dismissed by Hitler, because Hitler sent around a circular saying that everyone in the diplomatic service has to sign a statement saying they're a pure Aryan. And von Wuthenau wrote back. Now, he was a count, the last of the royal house in Germany. This was strange for von Wuthenau, strange for anybody in that position. Wrote back to say, there is no such thing as a pure Aryan. All people have black blood. Oh, God, he had to flee after that, because Hitler would have gotten him. So I rushed off to Mexico to meet this strange man. And I went to his chateau. And he'd heard about me because I had written him first and told him what I had done. And we sat in that place, okay? We sat on his steps half the night arguing because he couldn't. You have to show me a hell of a lot of evidence to convince me of something that everybody believes is true history. And he says, I said, I have to see these heads. He said, I have a few in my study. I said, that's not good enough. I have to be sure that they are valid, that you are now making this up. He was a little annoyed by that. He wanted to throw me out of the house. But nonetheless, I persisted. You have to prove this to me. I need to see sculptures of these people. He says they're not in the big museums. They don't take chances like that in the big museums. You have to go to private collections. And the next day he started to take me to private collections, and I was utterly stunned. You would be surprised how much history is hidden in private museums. They don't allow these things in the big places. It's just like in Egypt. I am responsible for returning to the modern Egyptians the splinters of the Sphinx's nose and chin which Napoleon's army blew off. A friend of mine, Garland Roberts, an adventurer, he was in England. He went into the British Museum and he found that they had the splinters of the Sphinx's nose and chin. How he did that, but he's a fellow, he's a daredevil. He would risk his life just to prove a point. And I says, you go back there. I'm going to pay your way to Britain. You go back and photograph the damn thing. Pretend you are a, messenger boy, whatever it is, get a job there, get the damn thing. And he brought back startling pictures. And I called Sheikh Anta Diop, the head of the radiocarbon laboratory in Dakar. He's dead now. He was the leading African scientist. And I got in touch with him and I told him what had happened. And I got in touch with Gamal Abdel Mokhtar, the Arab delegate at UNESCO. Sheikh Anta was at UNESCO too. And I got in touch with, I told Garland Roberts, he has to be on the phone. And we started a conversation with the British Museum. And I started out by saying, sir, we understand and we have hard visual proof that you have the splinters of the Sphinx's nose and chin in your museum. And I have the Arab delegate at UNESCO here and the African delegate, etc. And we'd like to negotiate the return of the splinters of the Sphinx's nose and chin to the Egyptians. Now, Keika. No, Van Sertima, we can't do that. See, most of the things we have in our museums come from all over the world. If we started returning things to this and that country, we'll have no museums. I said, sir, we're not asking you to destroy the museum. This is a specific object. This is a matter of the very gravest importance. I have on the line with me Gamal Abdel Mokhtar, the Arab delegate, Sheikh Anta Diop, the African delegate, myself, Garland Roberts, who has proof that they were the pieces. He photographed them. And he said, Well, we will consider it. Do you know? Sheikh Anta spoke. I had a French translator. Sheikh Anta spoke. I spoke. Alan Roberts spoke. Do you know the Arab delegate? We're returning it to the bloody Arabs, you know. He never said a bloody word. Because the Arabs are not Egyptian. Don't make any mistake about that. It's just like we're in this room here. This is America. It would be hard to find a Native American in this room. The world has changed dramatically. There have been half a dozen invasions of Egypt. The Persians, the Greeks, the Syrians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs. That is not Egypt. Egypt is no longer Egyptian. They have not a damn thing to do with the building of the pyramids. We now have hard proof, very hard proof, that Egypt was African when the pyramids were built. There is no question about it. This is not guesswork. This is not theory. We found the skeletons in the ancient graves. We found sculptures, which you'll never see when you go to Egypt. They don't put those things on display. But now we have the hard proof. And I'll deal with that later when we come to deal with the Egyptian section of this lecture. But I appeared before the Congressional Committee and I presented 12 witnesses, all European. Because they're going to say I'm Afrocentric if I show them this African said this. No. I'm going to take the very people that you think you will listen to. Columbus is the first person. I said, that's how I began. I'm not the first person to suggest there were Africans in America before Columbus. Christopher Columbus is the first person to say that. He actually says in the Journal of the Second Voyage that when he was in Haiti, Native Americans came to them and told them that black-skinned people had come from the south and southeast trading in gold-tipped metal spears. But I appeared before the Congressional Committee and I presented 12 witnesses, all European. Because they're going to say I'm Afrocentric if I show them this African said this. No. I'm going to take the very people that you think you will listen to. Columbus is the first person. I said, that's how I began. I'm not the first person to suggest there were Africans in America before Columbus. Christopher Columbus is the first person to say that. He actually says in the Journal of the Second Voyage that when he was in Haiti, Native Americans came to them and told them that black-skinned people had come from the south and southeast trading in gold-tipped metal spears. Columbus may or may not have believed, but he actually collected samples of these spears. They were sent back to Spain. They were meticulously, microscopically examined in Spain. And they were found to be identical, not just similar, identical with spears being forged in African Guinea. Of 32 parts, 18 were of gold, 6 of silver, and 8 of copper. Not only were they identical metallurgically, the words the Africans were using for these spears were the words the Americans were using. African word for gold, Ghana. That's why it's called Ghana. Gold Empire, the Golden Empire. And I checked it out in several African languages. Sarakole, Soninke, Gadzago, Kane. Vayan Mende, Kani. Kisi, it's Kani. Kono, it's Kanin. Fuel, it's Kane. That's the word for gold. And that's the word Americans are using. And they have their own bloody gold word. Why are they using this strange word? And presenting material which when checked out, when the metallurgists checked it out in Europe, they found the spears were identical in the ratio of gold, silver, and copper alloys. How could you have linguistic and metallurgical identities like that? It is utterly impossible. Not only that, I then went beyond that. I not just showed Columbus, Ferdinand wrote a book about his father, and he said, my father told me that he saw Negroes north of Honduras. Columbus knew what a so-called Negro looks like. He was in Africa. That's how my book began. Columbus sitting at a table in Africa, arguing with the Portuguese. I tracked this man down. It is possible when you become very famous, people could track every little thing. Who you slept with, who you tried to kill, who slept with your wife or your husband, everything. And one found a hell of a lot of stuff on this clown, or rather this villain. He did some horrible things. He's known as the Great Discoverer. Ferdinand said, my father told me he saw Negroes north of Honduras. He not only heard of them in Haiti, he actually saw them north of Honduras. Vasco Nunez de Balboa, on September the 25th in the year 1513, I've got it down to the day. He's coming down the slopes of Guaracu and Darien, which we now call Panama. And he and his men saw two tall black men among the Native Americans. They are startled. They haven't brought no black people there. Several of them commented it. Peter Martyr said they must have been shipwrecked. Then he also said they were Ethiopians. Well, Ethiopians, the word Ethiopian is not used for people of Ethiopia. The reason why Ethiopia gets that name, Ethiop means burnt skin. People of burnt skin would generally call them Ethiopian. So it's not referring to Ethiopia. Peter Martyr said they must have been shipwrecks. Lopez de Gomara said these blacks Balboa saw in the Indies were identical with the blacks we saw in Guinea. Rodrigo de Colmenares saw blacks. Captain of Balboa saw blacks east of the Gulf of San Miguel. Alphonse de Catafalque reported in his book, Study of Panama. L'Abbé Brasseur de Bourbourg was the guy who went to Panama, said there were two distinct people in Panama. The Mandinga, black skin, and the Tule, red skin. The red skin would be the Native American. And Alphonse de Catafalque presents us with a map showing blacks in various places in early America. The Charus of Brazil, the Yamasee of Florida, and the Black Caribs of St. Vincent, pre-Columbian. Alonso Ponce cites them off Campeche in Mexico. River Palacio cites them off Tegucigalpa in the Nicaraguan Honduran border. Ramon Pane speaks of them as the black gold traders. Fray Gregorio Garcia cites them off Cartagena, Colombia. A dozen Europeans, Christopher Columbus, Ferdinand Columbus, Vasco Nunez de Balboa, Peter Martyr, Lopez de Gomara, Rodrigo de Colmenares, Alphonse de Catafalque, L'Abbé Brasseur de Bourbourg, Alonso Ponce, River Palacio, Ramon Pane, Fray Gregorio Garcia, seeing things that are not there. Probably blacks are haunting their dreams. It's absurd. You cannot have 12 eyewitnesses to an event that never happened. And I have not just 12 eyewitnesses. That is just one piece of evidence. I have 12 pieces. So it's not just the eyewitnesses, there's the metallurgical evidence. That it was tested. They were found to be identical in the ratio of gold, silver, and copper alloys as spares being forged in African Guinea. 18 parts gold, 6 silver, 8 copper. How could you have identities like that? Then there's the linguistic identities, which I just mentioned. Saracolis and Inki, Gadzago, Vai, Mende, Kisikono, Pule went through half a dozen African languages to check out the word. And they're using the same bloody word that the Americans are using. How is that possible? If it was a European, you only need one piece of evidence. I'm giving you 7. If it was a European, you only need one piece of evidence. I'm giving you 7. If it was a European, you only need one piece of evidence. I'm giving you 7